Hello, this is a video about event handling in jQuery. So we're aware already that one of the most important ways that we write programs that run on web pages is that we use what is called event-driven programming, so that our program is mostly dynamic by listening for particular events, and when those events are triggered, we call specific functions in our program that do something in response. And jQuery allows us to do all of the standard event stuff that we might already be familiar with from the DOM, the Document Object Model, and the standard browser approach to these things. Again, the idea behind jQuery is to make this stuff maybe a little easier, maybe a little more efficient. And so I just want to cover in this video, like, what does that look like in jQuery? This is not going to be a super long deep dive because it's effectively the same kind of thing. So let's take a look at events in jQuery and how they get handled. To do that, I am going to copy across a new body of a web page. So I've got the web page I was working on in the last video. I'm just going to replace its body with this, just because it's what I was using in the notes. It doesn't really matter, like we could achieve all of the same things with whatever HTML we have in here, but just so that it's a little clearer. Again, jQuery is being included as a library script here using the CDN link, which I just obtained from jQuery.com, and my script is linked here at the bottom of the body element of the web page. So without further ado, then let's write some jQuery for handling events. So we'll head over to the script here, and we will commence. So if I want to listen for an event in jQuery, we follow the standard process, right? Which is that we select the thing that I want to listen for my event on. So for example, if I want to check for events that happen to the main heading, I select the main heading with its CSS selector. And then if I want to listen for a click, for example, since that's maybe the most obvious, how do I do that? Well, jQuery provides a method called on. And on is the thing that we use to create event listeners. It's like the add event listener method that we would have seen in plain JavaScript, and it works in the same way. So we provide it with two things. We provide it with the name of the event, and this is exactly the same idea as in plain JavaScript. Works in the same way. The events have the same name, so click, DBL click for double click, mouse enter, mouse leave, etc. Same thing. So we give the name in a string, and then we also provide a function to handle the event. This is the function that will be called when this click event occurs on the main heading, and it receives a single parameter called event with information about that event. This event parameter functions in the same way that the one does in plain JavaScript. jQuery has made some effort to kind of smooth out some of the properties that are available, and you can also always get access to the original HTML style event if you want to. You can take a look at that if you want to by doing console.log event if you really want to see what it looks like. So if we head back over to our web page here, here's the main heading here. I'll open my JavaScript console. I'll refuse to apply my style. That seems rude, but I'm not going to worry about that right now. Maybe it's because I don't have one. Let me unconfuse it by adding a CSS file here with nothing in it. Style.css. The reason that error message was occurring, just for curiosity's sake, is that here I am linking to a style sheet in my HTML, but there was no such file, css/style CSS, so the browser was complaining about that. Quite reasonable too. That should have gotten rid of that issue. There we go. So here we are, we're listening for a click event on the main heading. So if I click the main heading, it's going to run this function, which is going to log out the event parameter that comes through, the information about the event. So I click the main heading, click, and here it is here. And we can expand this event in our console here, just for the sake of it. And you can see it looks pretty similar to the way that the event looks in plain HTML. So if you want to, you can mostly just think about it as being roughly the same kind of thing. As I said, if you want access to the original event, it's here in the original event property. You can see that the mouse event is being stored there, or you can just work with the standard kinds of bits and pieces that are available here. And again, clearly you can read the documentation about jQuery to learn more about this. But let's do something slightly more interesting than that. So what if, instead of just printing that out, we want to remove the main heading. So we could select the main heading once we've detected this click. Oh, goodness me. Main heading, once we've detected this click, and we could say remove. So what does this do? This removes the main heading when you click it, right? So again, select the main heading, and on, which is our event listener method, on click, when there's a click, call this function. What does the function do? It removes the main heading. So this would mean that over here on our web page, if I click the main heading, it's gone. It's gone. And that's what that did. That makes a lot of sense. So great, it works. So you can see it's almost exactly the same. There's just a couple of nice details that we want to know. One of the nice details is that we know that it's a good idea, instead of working with explicitly reselecting an element inside these event handlers, we know that when we were doing this in plain JavaScript, we would use event.target in order to handle whichever element was affected by the click. We can do this in jQuery in a nice way, which is that we can refer to this. So what this is doing is this, when we're inside one of these event handlers, this thing here, this will refer to the event target, right? So it's effectively, it is just event.target is inside this. And we're reselecting it here with jQuery. We're saying, give me the jQuery version of this element that was clicked, so that we can use jQuery methods on it, right? We can't use jQuery methods on just plain this because it's not a jQuery thing. So we reselect it with jQuery. And the nice thing about this is just it's kind of reasonably easy to use. It's like this thing that was affected, remove it. It has the same effect, right? I click and it's gone. The benefit here, of course, is that if we had a more generic selection, such as if we wanted all of the things with the header class, if we go over and look at our HTML, you can see that both the h1 and the h2 have the header class. Now in our script, we're selecting both of those and we're saying if one of them gets clicked, then remove the one that was clicked, right? So if I click it, main heading goes, subheading goes. So those clicks are applied to the thing that was clicked. That's the advantage here of previously when we used event.target, that's what we were achieving, and here we use this inside a jQuery selection to do the same thing. So it's just a notational thing. It's very, very common to see people using this in this way inside event handlers in jQuery. That's kind of the standard. So worth knowing about, right? So that's one thing. If you want to get access to the thing that the event occurred to, you use this. And if you want to use it with jQuery, you select it with the $sign. The other thing that's really helpful is often you want to have an event that only occurs one time. And jQuery provides a really cute way to do this. So let's talk about a method that adds text to our page. So let's select, let's just select this entire section. And because there's only one, we'll just select it by its tag name. So that would just be the tag name of section. So we'll select section, again, in quote marks. That's the name of the tag. We'll attach an event listener. So we say on, and then the type of event, which is click. And then we write our event handler here. Obviously, again, this could be a named function that I write down below, but because I'm doing little things here, I find that it's a little bit nicer to use anonymous functions like this. And what do I want to do? I want to attach something to this. So I'm going to append something to this referring to the thing that was clicked, which in this case will be the section. And I'm going to add a paragraph that's like, this will be added on a click. But importantly, this will be added on every click, right? Let's do that. So this click thing, every time I click the section, it's going to carry out the function which is going to append this paragraph to the section. So let's go and look at that. Let's go click on the section. So I click and it adds this. I click and it adds it. Add. So every time I click, it does the thing again. But what if I wanted it only to take effect on the very first time that I click? jQuery provides a nice way to do this, which is that you can use exactly the same idea, except instead of saying on, which attaches an event listener for every time the event occurs, you can write one, which listens only for the first time that the event occurs and then stops working. And that means that we can write event handlers that only take effect one time. So this will be added on the first click. Okay, so the first one, because we use on, it listens for every click. And the second one, because we use one, it only listens for the very first time that event occurs. So the first click, both of these will be triggered, right? Because this one happens every time and this one happens the first time. But after that, only the first one will be happening. So if I click on the section now, we get the one that's added on every click, and we get the one that's added on the first click. But every time afterwards I click, I only get the first one that's using on, right? So the great advantage here of the one method is that we can have events that only happen one time in a nice kind of concise notation. So that's really quite helpful. That's worth having up your sleeve. The final thing, just carrying on here, is if you want to use them, jQuery provides special event listener methods with the name of the event. So for instance, if I want to listen for a click on the main heading, rather than using on, which is what I've been using, I can use a method called click and only provide the function to call when there's a click. Right? So it's like the name of the method here takes the place of specifying what kind of event it is. And so I could then again say something like this.remove to get rid of the main heading when I click on it. So it's explicit what event it is in this listener name. So again, if I click, it goes away. If you prefer this, you can use it. I personally think that using .on and specifying the event name here is a little more consistent and a little cleaner. That's a personal preference though, so kind of go for it in terms of what you want to do. So that kind of summarizes how events get handled in jQuery. There's not a whole lot more to it than that. Clearly the big thing, right, is knowing what the possible events are. They are just the standard DOM events, so you can read the documentation there. And knowing what you want to do inside your handler function that's super exciting and changes the world. Those are really the big things, right? And the specific jQuery things to remember is you can use on if you want to listen to every instance of the event. You can use one if you only want to listen for the event one time. And inside the event handler, you can use this to refer to the thing that the event occurred to. So in the case of click, it's the element that got clicked. Is what is inside of this. And that's gives us a nice clean way of writing that kind of code. So that's kind of it. All of the events, as I said, they're the events that you already know about. The only other thing that you might want to know how to do is remove events, because you might want to stop listening for an event at some point. And to do this, we could, let's make a sort of a puzzly situation. So if I wanted to be able to click on either of these headers and have it turn red, but then I wanted to stop doing that, how would I achieve that, right? So I want to be able to click on one of these. I want to be able to click on one of these and make it turn red. So I click on lorem ipsum, it turns red, but then after that I want that effect to stop. But I also want to be able to click on $sit_amit and it turns red instead, and then I can't do it here. So I could add separate event listeners to the two of these if I wanted to, but if I had a lot of headers, that would get annoying. So what I can do is I can use this idea that I can remove event listeners. So let's say we want to listen for clicks on all of the things that have a class of header. So we say on click on the header class, we write our function, and we turn the thing that got clicked red, right? So we say this.css. I'll use the sort of short one-liner notation here. Set it to red. So if a header gets clicked, you make it red, right? So I can say click, it turns red. But then I don't want this one to be able to turn red, but it will, right? Because they're still listening. It might seem like I can get away with this by just saying one. So I'll only listen for one click, right? So I only listen for one click, so when I click lorem ipsum, it turns red, and then you might think, well, now it's going to stop. But no, in fact, this one still turns red because they're separately still listening for a click, one each. Each one is listening for clicks independently of the other. So the one thing doesn't work. So what we can do instead is, after a click has taken effect the first time, we want to then stop listening for clicks so that it only ever happens that one time. To remove listeners, we target the same thing that the listener was listening to, such as header in this case. And what would you imagine would be the thing to reverse the effect of on? It is off. Off turns off a listener, and we can specify the specific listener that we want to stop listening to. So header on click tells us to start paying attention to clicks and call this function when it happens. Header off click tells us to stop listening for clicks on the header. And that will give us this effect that we're looking for here. So I can click on one of these, lorem ipsum, it turns red and we stop listening for clicks on headers, and that means that when I come down here and I click on $sit_amit, it doesn't turn red because the headers are no longer paying attention to clicks. So that can be a nice thing to have up your sleeve, is turning these things off. It can get pretty complicated if you try and do like more sophisticated things. You can run into trouble if you turn off all of the things that are paying attention to clicks on an element, but you actually only wanted to turn off one particular effect. That can become problematic. It's worth reading the more sophisticated documentation for on about this, and look for this idea of namespaces, which allows you to be a little bit more specific about different kinds of click handlers, for example, on the same element. And that's kind of it, right? That's really what we need to know about handling events in jQuery, because it is basically the same thing as in plain JavaScript. We target the element that we want to listen to. We use on to attach a listener for events so that we listen for them every time. We specify the event in the same way, like click, and then we provide a function to call when that event occurs. And then we do stuff based on that event having occurred. And then there's the extra nicety of using this to refer to the thing that in this instance was clicked, the element that was affected by the event. That gives us a shorthand for basically event.target. And it's worth remembering both that we can use one to only listen, consecutor, one in order to listen for just one instance of an event, and off if we want to stop listening for a particular kind of event altogether. That's all that we really need to know for this jQuery events topic. Other than that, it's the same purpose of reacting to things that are happening on a web page and doing cool things with that information. So I'm going to stop there. Now you are up to speed on how jQuery handles events. See you in the next video.